So we're gonna talk some Sinners, and let's talk about I think the two biggest scenes. Obviously, when all the musicians come, and the fire and the juke joint. What was the process of trying to pull that off?
It was just a collaboration between every department. It took so much planning, weeks and weeks of planning. It's Autumn, our cinematographer, Ryan, all the actors, the music, the practical special effects of actually literally burning a roof down, as well as helping that and with visual effects, helping get the camera through the roof, which the camera couldn't do. It's just speaks to the entire film, like collaboration between departments was at the heart of everything we did.
Similarly, though, the vampire at the end burning was also a critical moment of the film. What were the challenges in that one?
It was, well, the fire tornado was something that really needed to be as genuine as possible, because the whole film is, the effects aren't supposed to take you out of the movie. And so for the death at the end where we had the fire tornado, we had to practically make that. It took us quite a few weeks to come up with the look and to get it perfected. And then these guys took it home. It's great.
Also a real collaboration with the special effects makeup department, very complex, staged, real prosthetics in front of the camera for the different stages of Remek's death. And Espen and his team created digital versions of these stages and expanded the whole environment behind them with complex water simulations to complete something seamless that really makes the moment impactful.
Now, for you, did you have any favorite scene you like? Maybe a smaller scene, scenes that maybe wouldn't be as noticed by, like, say, student filmmakers as visual effects? Did you have a special scene you really liked?
Yeah, I don't know about not noticed, because I think probably everybody realized there was visual effects involved, but the snake attack at the beginning of the movie on the truck bed was an interesting one, just because Ryan put a lot of thought into that in terms of making sure that it was really kind of a foreshadowing of what happened later at the juke joint with the standoff with cornbread. And I think there were some really subtle things like the eye effect on the snake, kind of mimicking the look of the vampire's eyes, and there was a lot of thought that went into all of those different processes, so that there's a real line through the whole movie that you can appreciate on second, third viewing even more.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. There's a couple of worlds I'd like to talk about. The first thing, you have to create 1930s. Separating from the vampire, what was the biggest challenge trying to create the look of the 30s with visual effects?
Well, like so many of all of the visual effects in Sinners, in fact, they're rooted in photography and they're rooted in the design of our collaborators on the film, and in particular in that instance, Hannah Beechler, phenomenal production designer, and really we were honoring her designs, and if ever we needed to create anything, we would go to her and say, this is what we're thinking, how do you feel about it? And she would be very constructive and giving us lots and lots of notes for us to hit. So really we were helping support the other departments and would always defer to them really on the design in particular.
That was a key aspect of our visual effects work. I call it preservation of creative intent. Like everyone was cast by Ryan in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. And he wants everyone to bring their ideas and their creativity. So the moment that we're building things or rebuilding things that go into other departments' area or territory, we always rope them back in because we want to preserve their creative intent. And I think that's really important, especially when it comes to creating seamless visual effects work, because you want it to be technically seamless. And for us, that meant we had to create all the beautiful imperfections of 65mm IMAX film. But it also needs to be a seamlessness in front of the camera. And you can only achieve that if what you're building digitally is actually in line with what everyone else was doing on set. Hannah, production design, Ruth, wardrobe, and then especially Autumn Gerald Akapo, our DP. Anything that we did, we ran by her to make sure it is in line with her framing, her lighting, and just overall her creative intent.
Now, the first kind of fantasy scene was a juke joint where the different era musicians come in and they had the fires. I argue that scene doesn't work, the movie fails. That to me, that is really, because you're setting up so much. What were the challenges of doing that scene?
Well, I totally agree. From the first instance of reading that scene on the script, what popped into my head wasn't what we saw in the cinema at the end. It was hard to picture, its ancestors and ghostly figures and things like that. But we started that whole process with a piece of music from Ludwig Göransson. We then worked with our visualization team and partners at Barraboom here in LA and in Spain, and we started to block everything out to understand where the ancestors would appear, to understand how the camera would move, to understand the spatial constraints of the set, to understand how the Steadicam could move around. And the Steadicam had to be modified to be lighter, to be able to be moved around the space with smaller magazines, which meant that they couldn't run for as long a take as they usually could. So we had to understand that and find cut points within the scene. So it was very collaborative.
How about for you? What was the challenge for that sequence for you?
For what we call the surreal montage, I mean, we like to front load, which meant, as James just mentioned, an enormous amount of planning. There was a time when we were delivering a visualization iteration per day. And every day another one and another one and another one, because this was really about crafting what it needed to be, so that on the day when we were shooting all the little sections, because it's actually a 5-section oneer that we had to stitch together, we wanted it to be like a painting by numbers exercise. At that point, we wanted to make sure that Ryan can focus solely on performance. We didn't want him to worry about where does the camera have to be and when, and does it work with music and all of that. At that point, we had to know what we're doing. So I think overall, we delivered more than 50 previous iterations over the course of 6 weeks. And I remember the day when we brought one of those previous iterations together with the music by the Goransons. That was an incredible moment, like seeing it, how it was becoming alive in that particular moment was incredible. It was a total goosebumps moment.
You had to pull off the climax, the vampire burning scene, really the end of the film. What was the challenge with the burning up our vampires?
There's a lot of components at play in that movie. It's the death of our big bad, Remick, and there are contributing factors to his death. He gets smashed over the head with a guitar, he gets staked through the back, and the rising sun contributes to his flesh blistering and burning. So it was a collaboration between visual effects, practical effects, special effects, makeup, and so it really started with a chart to say, you guys are taking care of this, and then visual effects find the places where we can provide the sinew, so to speak, to build everything together. But it was really being true to the stuff we were able to film, and then visual effects doing the things that we couldn't do with makeup.
It was really rewarding. A lot of that hinges on prosthetic makeup. And those pieces were incredibly complex. And a lot of them we actually never shot in front of the movie camera. They were built so that we can scan them, because the intent was Ryan didn't want to cut away from the progressive demise of Remick. He wanted to show it in the frame. So we needed to make that happen digitally. And but at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't want to stray away from this preservation of creative intent principle. So essentially what we did is we applied digital makeup and then blended between the different stages. And the biggest compliment that we received eventually was that Mike Fontaine, the guy who put all of that together, called me and was like, I can't tell anymore what you did and what I did. The only reason why I know it wasn't me is because it's blistering and boiling and it's steaming and smoking, and so that was incredible. That was really great. And again, this goes hand in hand with those themes that we said. One other really big thing that I should mention is we were trying to create timeless work, because that's a big thing to Ryan. He talked to us about that a lot. A lot of the films from the early 2000s, in his eyes, you can still watch today. The visual effects work doesn't pull you out because it ages really well and it's timeless. That's what the goal was for what we were doing on Sinners. He wanted a film that he can still watch in 25 years and it will still look good. That's why we were falling back on a lot of those old school techniques, because they work. And it's amazing what you can achieve if you do this, this delineated handshake where the lines are all getting blurred between, who was doing what.
So you first read the screenplay. I'm sure you love it. It's for Sinners. But now you got to make the movie. What was your initial thoughts? Oh my God, this is going to be the biggest challenge for us.
No, it wasn't the biggest challenge. It was pure excitement, because Ryan didn't even know how great the movie was that he'd created. But myself, Ruth Carter, when we started talking, we knew it was going to be huge. So we passed this excitement on with Ryan. And Ryan was sort of, you're kidding. And then we start doing our research, and we do a lot of a deep dive, a lot of mood boards, a lot of historical research. So we're completely accurate for the period and representing the time.
And that's interesting because you have to actually create two different periods, 1930s, Jim Crow era, but also vampires.
Right.
So how is blending the two and figuring out how you can navigate that?
I mean, the vampires all occupied the 1930s, so it was that basic character makeup from that period for sharecroppers, workers, but then creating the style of the vampires was really what was so beautiful, which was the way they feasted, the way they ate. I wanted them to be like beasts of the Serengeti. I just didn't want that little bite. I wanted to be devoured. I wanted them to be able to bite anywhere on the body, not just the neck, the whole thing. And then we got the lenses. So that was a huge step.
To me, one of the key scenes is the vampire dance musical.
Yes.
A lot going on.
A lot.
What was the biggest challenge for that sequence?
The heat, the bugs, the perspiration. But when you're fixing your makeup, you're sealing it, you're doing it in layers, and also when you develop products that don't actually react to those conditions, you're pretty good to go. So that was the main thing. We just had to keep reapplying blood, freshening things up. But otherwise, I just want them to be looking as deconstructed as possible, and that is the reality.
The real important, I argue, every scene's important, but if you don't pay off the musical number where you're bringing in all the different musicians throughout time,
yes,
the movie, I think, wouldn't work as well. It really needed that. What was the process of doing that sequence? Because you had so many different characters, different eras, all mixed together.
I mean, that undoubtedly was a very complex and beautiful punctuation, actually, for the movie. And we had certain characters that were scripted. We had Water Sleeves as scripted, but Monkey King was not scripted. So I came up with this idea and asked Ryan, please let's do Monkey King. It's one of my favorite characters in Chinese mythology. So we ended up doing that. Ken Diaz worked doing some tribal makeups for the background, but pretty much, Ruth Carter dominated it and we led from that, but it was such a collaborative effort, everybody pulling together to make it look amazing.
When you first read the screenplay, I'm sure you loved it like all of us, but then you're like, we got to actually make this movie.
Yes. Yes.
What was the biggest, your initial worry or challenge, how are we going to pull this off?
I will say that after reading the script and having the concept meeting with Ryan and understanding his vision, it was go time, which means you got to think quick, you're thinking fast, and just figuring out who is the team that we're going to put together to make this happen. And so once we figured it out, it was full speed ahead. So we just make sure that we had some of the strongest people on our team to make sure to make sure the vision happened.
Yeah, so I came in after filming had already started as a replacement department head, and one of the big challenges for the film was the spirit ancestor scene with the 24 ancestor and future descendants. And so that was a big challenge, but it was great to collaborate with Ryan and Ruth Carter. I tried to work with on Black Panther, and that was a big opportunity to bring that, work with them again. And Ruth had done a lot of research before arriving, and she had rows and rows of costumes to go through. So we went through and we collaborated, put these things together. Some of the biggest challenges were the Chinese opera dancer scene and the Monkey King, which Neidhardt had started designing before we got there. And then we added, to the other ancestors, added a iridescent gold shimmer to them that would pop, particularly outside when the fire, when the thing burned up. Anyway, that was a big challenge there.
All right, and my other scene I want to talk about, my favorite scene is actually the vampire musical dance number. Because you got vampires at different stages of being vampires.
Yes.
Dancers, musical, but you had to create kind of like a family, which we're not used to seeing with vampires. That they're actually a loving family, not monsters.
Yes.
In that moment. So what was it? What went through that process of doing that scene?
Oh goodness. The process was, I remember just from at first going to all of the dance rehearsals. And when you see everyone before they get dressed up in hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and knowing that these people are about to be vampires. So what does this look like? What does this dance look like? To see all of the different cultures come together, for one, and you're doing this Irish dance, that's two. And it was just, to me, it was just so magnificent to see all of it come together. I would say that just being inspired by watching them in that dance rehearsal was the beginning part of trying to understand what is going to happen in this scene, because we know the story, but to see it come together was something else.
So a big part of it was the blood. Now, prior to my arrival, Ryan was concerned that he wanted these vampires bloody looking, and he wanted the blood to read. And when we were filming at night and putting blood on darker surfaces, you needed a blood that would read in that. So we had highs and lows. We had drying blood around the edges, fresh blood in the center, and it was just, we made sure that those attention to details is what Ryan was looking and asking us to make sure that we're there. And Ned had a big part of that too.
Yeah, I took care of Rimmick and Jack. So he was amazing, first of all, that he had done so much prep getting that dance number down, but also just that whole feeling that he's bringing his culture now into this whole world and this family he's creating and trying to find his people again, through the song and stuff. It was amazing. And his actions were so intense, and he did it over and over again. So the blood continuity, and it was a very animalistic feel that Ryan wanted for all the blood. So he's covered, but it wasn't distracting, I felt.
You love the script because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But you got to make the movie. What were the challenges? Let's start with the big vampire dance scene, because that seemed to be a huge challenge.
That, unfortunately, wasn't part of us, but we were on set for that.
It was. Because
Wait,
we had to get all of our vampires ready for the first time together that night, actually.
Oh my God, you're absolutely right. Thank you
It
for
was the
reminding me.
first time that we had every single vampire playing at the same time that night, and with little time in between our first scene and our second scene, we had to get everybody ready in like an hour or less, and for everybody to switch into their vampire looks. It was a heavy feat. And they had the song playing non-stop. They were practicing their lyrics for the song the whole time we were working.
Yeah.
And the energy was great, but it felt chaotic.
And it was hard because Jack was doing the high kicks and we had prosthetics under the legs, so it was really difficult to keep up with that during the entire time he was doing the high kicks.
Usually you do these films and you do the repeat song over and over and over, and you're like, oh my God, at the end. I was like, the whole night, I was really into it. So I was
Then for you, what was the most challenging Sinner scenes to pull off?
Probably the vampire burning scene.
The ending.
Because we only had 2 sunrises. Originally, they had scheduled it for only 1 sunrise, which we know is about an hour and a half of time with the real sun. So they got us 2 sunrises to do that makeup, which took a lot of different steps and a lot of different levels of burning to create that look. And just with the time constraints that we had, it was no easy feat.
They'd break us away and they were like, okay, you got 20 minutes, what can you do? And we're like,
And they had blood effects and smoke effects and like 4 different levels of burns within that 5-minute scene you see on camera. It was a lot. That was the hardest one to do just because of the time constraints with the sunrise.
Fighting against the sun,
We have a lot of students that watch our show, so we'd like to end with you. A question for you. What do you recommend students to do, young students who want to get in the industry, how to break in?
Oh, practice. Go home and just put shit on your face. Just keep making monsters, drawing, sculpting, anything you do at home, just keep going.
don't be afraid to mess up.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, that's the process. Mess up. You got to mess up a lot, and you get there.
Half the time of makeup effects is making it up.
Okay, so when you first read the script of Sinners, what was your oh my God, this is going to be hard to pull off? What was your biggest initial challenging thing you were worried about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I first read the script, it was amazing because you love these characters so much right from the very beginning, and then almost everyone goes through a transformation. So your heart really goes out to them. It's such a crazy arc of a story, but then how are we going to transform almost this entire cast?
One of the scenes I would assume was the biggest challenge was the kind of like with the vampire dance scene, where they're all singing and dancing. You had different vampires in different stages. Was that one of the challenging scenes for you?
It was, yeah, because of all the people, but I have to say that was probably my favorite night of filming. We shot the entire thing in one night. I had no idea that Jack O'Connell had those dance moves, and it was unbelievably fun. It was a night where it felt like everyone really came together, and there was a massive applause as the sun came up and we finished shooting it.